Have you ever eaten something that you swore never to eat again? Maybe you didn't know what you were eating until after you swallowed it. My high school biology teacher gave us chocolates one day, and after we ate them, we found out that they were chocolate-covered ants. It was like a Nestle Crunch bar, but I won't eat it again. Last week, my mother told me about a dish that my great-grandmother used to make. It was some kind of sausage, and my mom loved it until she found out what it was. It's called blood sausage. Whenever they slaughtered one of their farm animals, they would drain the blood, cook it with seasoning and a binding agent, and make something like sausage out of it. When she found out that she was eating cooked, congealed blood, my mother never ate blood sausage again. Today in our reading, Jesus' flesh and blood are on the menu, and some people reacted just like my mother. No, thank you. Our reading is from the Gospel according to John, and let's remember that this Gospel is not to be read at face value. Has anyone seen Shrek? I like that scene in Shrek where he's trying to explain that he's not just a simple guy. Ogres have layers, onions have layers. The Gospel of John, according to scholar Elaine Pagels, has layers of meaning that need to be discovered. So place your napkin on your lap, tie on a bib, and let's dig in. Whenever we talk about the body and blood of Jesus, we're usually talking about the Last Supper. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, Jesus holds the bread and cup symbolically. The bread represents his flesh, and the cup represents his blood, but not in John's Gospel. In John's Gospel, this is not the Last Supper. There is no loaf and cup. Jesus is teaching them in the synagogue in Capernaum when he said, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me and I in him." Now, this is a jarring statement. Most of us are desensitized to this language. We have a nice ritual here with this delicious bread that Dawn prepared. Thank you, Dawn. And some nice store-bought grape juice. There's no flesh and blood here. So let's take off our modern religious glasses for a moment and see what Jesus said. Now, according to scholar Katie Turner, not to be confused with our own Kate Turner, who is infinitely more better, Jesus' statement was especially jarring for his first century audience. Let's remember that the New Testament is written in Greek, but Jesus spoke Aramaic, so there's already at least one layer of translation going on here. The word for eating in Greek is phago, but in our reading today, Jesus uses a different word. When he says, "eat my flesh," the verb is trogo, and trogo is usually used to describe animals feeding at a trough. It means to crunch, munch, or gnaw. So Jesus is telling us to crunch or gnaw on his flesh. Imagine for a moment that there on our communion table, instead of the plates and the chalices, we had a feeding trough, and as you come forward for Holy Communion, you stick your face in the trough. And imagine that someone walked in here today and said, "If you want life, chew on my flesh." We'd show that person the door or call the police. And then it gets worse. Jesus says we have to drink his blood. I'm sure people reacted like my mother did when she found out about the blood sausage. This statement was particularly difficult for the Jewish community. Jesus was a devout Jew. He keeps the laws, he participates in the temple cult, he makes sacrifices just like everyone else, and he knows that Jewish law forbids Jews to consume blood. This goes all the way back to Genesis 9, chapter 9, 3-4. Where God says, "Every creature that lives shall be yours to eat, as with the green grasses I give you all these. You must not, however, eat flesh with its lifeblood in it." It's reinforced in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 10, when God says, "If anyone of the house of Israel or of the aliens who reside among them eat any blood, I will cut that person off from the people. They'll be excommunicated, cast out to live by themselves." So for the Hebrews, the life is in the blood, and the life belongs to God. You cannot eat it. It has to be poured into the ground, returned to God. So Jesus, who always keeps the law, is telling us to break it. or is he? As I pondered these words, I wondered about digestion. Have you heard the saying, "You are what you eat"? This phrase originated as the quote on the front of our bulletin this week, which Evelyn, our office person, put a typo in. It says, "Tell me what to eat." It should say, "Tell me what you eat, and I will tell you what you are." This phrase originated about 200 years ago because of the idea that diet was important because nutrition from our food reaches every cell of the human body. This is actually not true. You are what you absorb. Have you ever eaten something and then 20 minutes later you're running for the bathroom? We say, "That went right through me." That's actually impossible. Food cannot travel through the body that quickly. Instead, something in the food you ate triggers a chemical response that causes your digestion to speed up. And when that happens, the nutrients in your food don't get absorbed into the bloodstream and they don't reach your cells. During normal, healthy digestion, nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream and they are carried to every cell in your body. So maybe Jesus is saying, slow down enough to make sure you absorb Christ. Let's remember that Christ is not Jesus' last name. It is a title. According to Friar Richard Rohr, author of the book The Universal Christ, Christ is like an archetype. He is the perfect combination of God and creation, the sacred and the profane, the holy and the human. Jesus is the perfect example of Christ, fully God and fully human. What if Jesus is saying, whatever you do, absorb Christ? Somehow get more of the holy in your life. Slow down enough to encounter the divine. Search for the sacred. Find peace in the chaos. Look for beauty. Some of us find Christ at the communion table, but we only eat this bread once a month. What about Monday or Tuesday or next week? What do you need to remind you that life is holy? What is your soul hungry for? Let's be intentional about embodying Christ. What is your soul longing for? Maybe solitude. Maybe we turn off the news for a while to find peace. Maybe your soul wants a little more time or another day with someone you love. When you get that, crunch, munch, and chew it. Drink it down. Slowly absorb the holiness of that moment. As two congregations learning to worship and serve together in partnership, how do we find Christ together? How do we slow down our process enough to discover how we, as two churches becoming one, can absorb Christ? Wherever we notice those sacred moments of worshiping together, let's crunch, munch, chew, and drink it down. What are we hungry for?